So as I've told any conservative who asks me, one of Scheer's challenges is, what are you going to do with Bernier? This is not the first time in history that a prime minister or a party leader has had an ambitious rival in caucus. In fact, it's rare that they don't. Yesterday, Lauren Gunter and I talked about how Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin quarreled for a decade. Now, we focused on how Jean Chrétien finally handed over the reins of the Liberal Party to Paul Martin, but put in various poison pills to wreck it for his successor. But the real lesson is that Jean Chrétien managed to harness Paul Martin's strengths and keep it together for a decade before it all fell apart. He knew Paul Martin was ambitious and connected and had a strong reputation with certain constituencies, and Chrétien found a modus vivendi, a way of living together with his rival that was successful. Isn't that, in a way, one of Chrétien's most significant achievements? Only in that it allowed Chrétien to have any of his other achievements. Imagine if instead Paul Martin would have bolted from the party or behaved in a mutinous manner. I mean, he did to some degree. He built up a rival organization for years. He slowly colonized all the levers of the party, but he kept his political gunpowder dry for a decade. He didn't shoot at Jean Chrétien until the very end when he felt their agreement had expired. Isn't that the analogy here? Isn't Andrew Scheer's first job to unify his party behind him, to not only make himself the true leader in reality as well as in form, but to find out how to deploy Maxime Bernier's strengths to the benefit of the party itself, to Scheer's own benefit? Yes, we know they have policy differences, especially on supply management. How odd that Andrew Scheer would let that obscure, weird issue derail party unity, especially when 80% of the party knows that supply management of dairy cartels is the wrong policy. It's weird and stubborn of Andrew Scheer. Imagine making a deal with Bernier on that. Imagine if Andrew Scheer made a deal with Bernier and let Bernier himself be the point man on that file. As in, imagine if Andrew Scheer said to Bernier, okay, tough guy, you want the Conservative Party to take on the Quebec dairy industry? Literally the sacred cows, sacred milk cows of Canada? Fine. Imagine Andrew Scheer saying, fine, I agree with your idea, I accept your idea, but you have to execute it. Your job, Maxime Bernier, is to come up with the new policy and to be the salesman for it in Quebec. Go in and do the heavy lifting yourself. You want it? You got it. Would that be smart? I think it would be. It would take away Bernier's policy grievance. It would give Bernier a very busy job to keep him occupied. And it would actually use Bernier's talents and skills, his Quebec reputation, his French fluency, his confidence and knowledge in the file. And if Andrew Scheer really thinks it's political suicide to take on the dairy cartel, why, what better gift to give to his rival Bernier? Now, I'm just brainstorming here, but really, Jean Chrétien put Bay Street Paul Martin onto the toughest file he could, selling the GST to the country after promising he'd scrap it, reducing the deficit, fixing the country's finances. That was probably the toughest job in the government in the time. So Chrétien not only relied on Martin's talents, but he kept him busy and gave him the tough job. Isn't that an obvious template here? There are other scenarios, of course. Make Bernier the co-leader for Quebec. Give him the title deputy leader. Give him the job of going around Quebec and digging up the political backyards of Liberals and the NDP. Again, what a great fit, including Bernier's views on immigration and culture. Because remember from the Angus Reid poll we saw yesterday, Quebec is the province where literally 51% of people want less immigration. It's the highest number in Canada after Saskatchewan. Bernier is a total fit for that file. While the Anglo press in Canada has been savaging Bernier, the Quebec press is almost unanimous in support of him. Great. Send Maxime Bernier out with the mission of winning 25 seats in Quebec, 35 seats. Why not? Go take them from the NDP. The Bloc Québécois is dead. Look at how Justin Trudeau badmouths old stock Québécois. I think Maxime Bernier could do it. Now, that's just brainstorming. Cut a deal with Bernier. Use his talents. You don't like it? You don't want to compromise with your rival? That's odd. Andrew Scheer compromises on everything else. He talks to the media who hate him. He submits to them. He submits to dairy farmers, whatever. But he won't compromise with the guy who won 49% of the vote last year and who has a larger public presence than he does. You'd think compromise would be Scheer's strength. It's what he did for a decade as the Speaker of the House. As I told any conservatives who complained to me, there are two other options with Maxime Bernier. You could fire him from the party. Good luck with that. That would cause a rift. That would demoralize the party, de-energize it, especially in Quebec. I mean, it's one thing for Andrew Scheer to bravely ban the grassroots rebel, but to ban Bernier, that's really telling 49% of the party to leave. And on what basis? Because he's cutting into the leader's celebrity action? Because he's taking the media limelight? Sorry, media attention is earned, it's not given. Andrew Scheer won't get any more media coverage if he sacks Bernier. The opposite. Bernier will completely be unleashed. He will not be restrained at all. He'll be the daily go-to source for the media on anything, including to criticize Scheer. I mean, I guess Scheer will get more press than he ever has before, but it'll all be about how the party is splitting up, how he's dividing the right after Stephen Harper united it. So yeah, firing Bernier probably won't work. And Andrew Scheer's default policy has been what you'd expect: passivity, inertia, indecision, hesitation. He's just closing his eyes and ears and hoping that all this bad stuff will go away. That's called denial, and it's not working very well, is it? So the first solution for Andrew Scheer is to strike a deal with Bernier like Chrétien did with Martin. And if he can't do that, doesn't that say something about his abilities as a political leader? If he can't handle Bernier, how could he, as a future prime minister, how could he handle bigger, tougher challenges like, John Horgan, the recalcitrant premier of British Columbia, who's blocking the pipeline unconstitutionally? Or how could he possibly handle Donald Trump in a NAFTA negotiation? If you can't handle Bernier, you can't handle Horgan or Trump. It's a test. You bet it is. I think there's still a lot of goodwill towards Andrew Scheer in the party. I still have goodwill towards him too, despite how he's treated us here at the Rebel. Of course, we want him to win over Justin Trudeau. Of course, we don't want Bernier to split the party. That would just give the Liberals another 10 years in power. But Andrew Scheer, the Conservative leader, has not been very conservative, and he has not shown a lot of leadership. Politics can be a centrifugal force, you know what I mean? Things falling apart, stresses and grievances and issues can pull a party apart, can pull a caucus apart for sure, and grassroots members. The leader, his job is to hold them together through a common sense of mission and action and through example and by inspiration. I don't think Andrew Scheer is ticking those boxes yet. When senior party staffers working in his office are contacting me, telling me they agree with their criticism of Andrew Scheer, that's not good. His own inner team isn't even gelled yet. How are you going to inspire the country if you can't inspire your own staff? But let me end with my long-standing criticism, because I think it all goes, it goes to all these other issues, and that's Andrew Scheer's fear of the mainstream media. I had a phone call with a very senior member of Scheer's team. I'm not going to say who. And I said, why are you guys boycotting us? Why are you banning us? Why are you telling all your MPs not even to talk to us? And forget about me. I mean, it's not personal. How about talk to David Menzies? How about talk to Sheila Gunn-Reid? How about talk to any of our people? And my senior connection said, because if we interact with you, the Rebel, that in itself becomes a media story for a whole week. And it's true, he's right. All those gossips on the lobbyist panels, on the TV shows, they would go nuts. The Trudeau fangirls at the CBC would go nuts. What my connection said to me is completely true. But it is also completely pitiful and not conservative and not leaderly. It's an admission that Andrew Scheer and the people around him care more about what the gossip girls say than they do about their own internal compass about what's right and wrong and how to govern, let alone their own party's base. On any given day, we here at the Rebel have more viewers than the CBC's show, The National, their flagship news show, has on TV. So it's not even like the CBC is a real threat. And those viewers, they're not voting Conservative anyway. So the only threat here is psychologically, emotionally. Andrew Scheer is actually being bullied, being pushed around, being peer pressured by a small group of people who hate him. It's a kind of battered women syndrome, kind of Stockholm syndrome. He keeps thinking that maybe if he just appeases the CBC and Maclean's and the Toronto Star and the Huffington Post, maybe they'll really like him and be kind to him next time. And maybe even they'll cheer for him in the next election. No, that's not going to happen. Other than the Toronto Sun, the Rebel will be the only media in the country who gives him and the Conservatives a fair shake. But as long as he seeks the approval of the media party, he will be hamstrung. He won't be able to clearly articulate Conservative ideas. He won't be able to take on sacred cows like the Quebec dairy cartel. He'll be afraid of dealing with Conservative leaders like Maxime Bernier. And he'll continue his weird boycott of the biggest Conservative media outlet in Canada. That's my advice for Andrew Scheer. I've given it to, I don't know, half a dozen of his MPs and senators and staff. I wonder what they'll do with it. That's an excerpt from my daily TV show, The Ezra Levant Show. Normally it's behind a paywall, but I thought you'd like this video, so we put it on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to watch the daily show every day, including always 2 interviews a day, and I read my hate mail, just click on this screen and become a premium member.